Hello my friends, HM here. Now this video will be about the latest events in Syria. A lot of things has happened in the past 24 hours. Iran and Russia have decided to pull out. Assad has fled to Tehran and sent his family to Moscow. And the Free Syrian Army is taking over in the south. And the Kurdish forces also expanding their territory in the east of Syria. And then there's a stalled progress from the Turkish Islamists that are attacking Homs. And if you think this all sounds interesting and you want to hear more about it, then you should keep watching. Now, before we begin, I'd like to say thank you very much to all the people who support me by liking my videos and also subscribing to my videos, and especially to the channel members I have and also those who donate to my channel. Thank you so much. You make this channel possible. Okay, so let's jump right into the news for today about Syria. This is a big map. Here we have Turkey, we have Syria down here with all the fighting going on. We have Israel and Egypt. We have Jordan and we have Iraq, just to show you where we are in the world here. Of course, the Syria conflict relates to Ukraine. I had hoped, frankly, that Russia would be bogged down long fight with the Turkish-supported rebels, because that would have diverted resources away from the Ukraine war, so Ukraine would have had an easier time. But what has happened now is that they have been overwhelmed, these Syrian forces, including the Russians, with the success of these rebels that are not only the Turkish-supported Islamists, but also the Kurdish forces that have rebelled at the same time against the Assad regime, and also the Free Syrian Army that has now also rebelled down here from the south. And right now I have seen news that both Russia and Iran has declared that they're pulling out, and the evidence on the ground also suggests that they're definitely pulling out of Syria. Actually, it's not going to help Ukraine, because Russia will no longer send resources to Syria. There is still a possibility that they will send some resources, but it's not going to be much. Now I will return to the question about how events happening in Syria, how that will affect the Ukrainian war. But I think first we should take a look at what is actually happening in Syria before we can answer that question. Now, the most important things that are happening in Syria right now is actually from the south. This area here, the border area between Israel and Syria, has now been taken over by rebel groups that I believe is mostly the Free Syrian Army. But there's probably also some Islamists among them, so we can't be sure exactly who is controlling what. And also I know a lot of Druze people here are living in this area, and they're definitely also part of those groups that are taking over this area. The Druze are good people, they are the good guys. The Free Syrian Army also the good guys, but there are also some Islamists here that are not good. But I suspect most of these Islamists are Hezbollah Islamists that are trying to make attacks from this border here and into Israel. And they're all pulling out now because they were supported by the Assad regime, and now the Assad regime is pulling out. Russia also had a base here, and Russia is also pulling out of this area. This area has expanded a lot. Like 3 days ago, it was all Syrian controlled, and now suddenly a lot of people have risen up against the Assad regime, and the Assad regime is now pulling forces out together with Russia, and also I believe Hezbollah, towards the capital Damascus. And where is this capital? It's right here. This is Damascus. And you can see from this map that rebel forces are already inside part of Damascus. And I think it's only a question about hours before all of Damascus is also taken by these rebels of all kinds. And then the infighting will probably begin to who will get the spoil of taking control with this large city, the capital of Syria. Where are all the Assad forces going? That's the other question. What is the strategy that Assad and the Alawites sect have in order to survive in Syria? Well, let's zoom a little bit out. I think what is happening is that Assad's forces, which are controlled by an Alawite sect that is 10% of the population in Syria, they are pulling all of their people into this coastal area here, where there's a lot of mountains. That's where most of them live, but they managed to take control of Syria a long time back, and then they have ruled it brutally for decades. But now that rule is definitely over. The Alawites will not rule Syria anymore, but they might be able to hold on to the original area where the Alawites grew out from. And this is this coastal area where Russia also has, I think they have about 2 naval bases and 2 airports. So Russia might also still have a presence here in Syria if they can hold this area. There is reason to suspect that they could hold this area if they're pulling everything they got into this area from all over Syria, and that's what is happening right now. Then perhaps they can hold the area, perhaps they can even hold this Homs city, because what has happened up here, as you can see, let me zoom a little bit out. This area here is the Turkish rebels that are Islamists, bad guys, not nice guys, and they have been progressing very fast, but they have kind of been stopped here at Homs. And you can see there's a lot of red spots in this map here. That means it's the Syrian and Russian forces that are bombarding these rebels, so they are pushing back on them here. I think that the Assad regime, what's left of it, wants to hold on to Homs, also this coastal area here. And I think that's the only way that Russia can still have a presence in Syria, if they can keep their naval bases there. But that also means that they'll still have to send equipment and forces to this area, because I don't think the Turkish-supported Islamists are happy about having this part of the country controlled by somebody else. So they're going to attack them, and there's going to be a war there. I don't know who will win it, whether they can get their minds together in the Alevite sect and start fighting back effectively. It still needs to be decided. But what I do think is that down here in Damascus will fall within a couple of hours. I think all of this area here that is red currently and regime controlled by Assad, well, it will all become green very soon. Also, what else has happened in Syria in the past 24 hours? Well, this green area here has happened. The green area here is Free Syrian Army. And it used to be a much smaller area around here where they, together with a US military base with about 800 Marines, controlled this road that are coming in from Iraq and into Syria. There are very few roads that goes from Iraq and into Syria. There's this one that goes in here that was controlled by US Marines. And then there was this one up here that also comes in. And that was kind of controlled by the Assad regime, but not anymore, because the Kurds have also moved in when the Assad regime forces left. And so has the Iranian forces. Now the Kurds are moving in and controlling this. So yeah, there's no longer hope of getting any supplies from Iran through Iraq and into Syria. These roads have been cut completely in the past 24 hours. And also, let's get back to the situation down here. This area with the Free Syrian Army that was present here, they have expanded their territory quite a lot as the Syrian army forces have pulled back. They have moved in. Especially, they have taken this city here, Palmyra, that is kind of a hub for controlling the very few roads that are in this desert region and the only way to get into Syria from Iraq and stuff. And they have also moved all the way up here and are progressing. The Syrian forces, that's the red area here, they're retracting and they're moving forward here. So what I think will happen in the next few hours is that these green areas, both the green areas from down here, that area will be merge with the green area from up here. What I also expect is that the Kurds are going to move up here. Let's move a little bit down here. The Kurds, 24 hours ago, they were on the, you can see there's a river system that goes down here. The Kurds were basically on the east bank of that river system, and the Syrian forces was on the other side. But now they have pulled back, and the Kurds are on both sides here, and are now controlling all the cities that are here. There are a few exceptions. The Kurd forces are the yellow stuff here, but then we have a green area here. I believe that, again, is the Free Syrian Army that has taken control with some of these areas. We also have some green stuff down here, but I think these are good forces and not bad forces. Now, the black areas here, they're bad forces. They are Islamic State, ultra-Islamist, and I'll put them in the same ball game as the Turkish-supported Islamist here. They're bad. But again, the Western world has zero control over these Islamic State Islamists. They are totally their own mind, whereas perhaps the West has more control over Turkey, because Turkey's economy completely depends on being integrated with the Western world. So maybe we have a little bit of control over them, but I don't think much. They have become full-blown Islamist and they want to create a caliphate. and merge all Muslim countries into one big caliphate. That's what they want. And it's not going to be nice to not be a Muslim in these countries. They will purge all non-Islamist or non-Muslims in these countries. It'll be a bloodbath. The Western world, the way we are fighting with de-escalating, we are actually abstaining from fighting. I think there will be a caliphate, perhaps in the Middle East, because we're not doing anything. We are just pulling back. We have to change policy. That's my own opinion here, but we have to change policy and start taking the fight to these Islamists, or these Islamists will just keep expanding. Just like we have to take the fight to Russia. When this Russian fascist nationalism wants to expand Russia's borders and gobble up Ukraine, we need to fight them. We need to send troops, we need to send weapons to fight them back. It's democracies that are being attacked here by the Islamists and also the fascist nationalists from Russia. And we need to do something about it, or our democracy will just slowly but surely die. That's my opinion on this. And maybe I'll lose some subscribers for that opinion, but I don't care. This is my opinion. I believe strongly in it. But let's get back to the news here. Okay, I want to return a little bit to this area up here where the Turkish Islamists are attacking. They are attacking Homs. As I told you just before, the Assad regime and the Russians are actually fighting back in this area, so they are intent to keep Homs. We also know that the Islamist forces have been here for like 2 days. The Russians have bombarded some bridges that makes it difficult for the Islamists to move their heavy equipment like artillery and tanks and armored fighting vehicles into this area and closer to Homs. And they'll need that heavy equipment in order to take that city. If the Russians and Alevites here are serious and fighting them back, then they need heavy weapons. And also, I have read some reports that they're also running out of gasoline and diesel to move their stuff. I think they have been surprised themselves about how easily this has been and how fast that the Assad forces are crumbling. So they hadn't planned for that much gain that fast, and now they're running out of gasoline and diesel, of course. But not for long, because up here we have Turkey, and Turkey will send lots of new tankers, but it all takes a little bit of time, and they have to order thousands of tankers to send diesel and oil into this area so the fighting machine can get up and running again at full speed. So I think that's what is hampering the Turkish Islamists here from making further progress towards Homs. I'll also say that if these Turkish rebels take Homs, then the only way that Assad forces can move troops from the Damascus area and into this stronghold for the Alevites in the coastal area would be that little road down here, because you can see there's some waterways here that are not passable. I think the Islamists, if they take Homs, they will also take the rest of this area. That won't be a problem, and then they have essentially blocked Assad forces from moving anything more into this coastal area. So I think they will fight very hard, the Assad and the Russians, for keeping the Homs. They need that. They at least need to hold it for a couple of weeks while they're moving all their stuff down there. And then perhaps after that they can lose it. But I think it's just such a big city. There's a lot of valuable stuff in it and infrastructure. They want to keep it. I'm pretty sure they want to keep it. But we'll see what will happen. What else has happened in Syria here? Well, let's go up here to this area here. There's also a lot of fighting here that is now happening between the Kurdish forces that are good and then these Turkish Islamist forces that are bad. Hundreds of thousands of Kurdish people have already been displaced from this area because they live here and they are not wanted by the Turkish Islamists. They want them out. But they haven't killed them. They have actually allowed them to move out in cars and stuff going towards these other Kurdish controlled areas. But still, they have to move through a battle zone because Kurdish forces are also battling these Turkish Islamists along these front lines here. And you can see there's some activity going on with these reports here. But perhaps the battle is not that intensive yet. But I think when the Turkish Islamists, if they take control over Homs, then they're going to focus their attention on fighting the Kurdish troops in other parts of Syria, because Turkey hates these Kurds and they don't want them to have any control or any freedom anywhere. So I think that's part of the deal, that the Islamists here in Syria, they need to take control with the Kurdish controlled areas to quell that resistance from the Kurds. The thing is that 20 million people who are living in Turkey, a country of 85 million people, are Kurds. and they are suppressed by the Turkish people who are living there. They don't want them to be able to have any freedom, and of course if they have a place here in Syria where they have weapons and stuff, then they can continue their fight for Kurdistan, also inside Turkey. But I think the Kurdish people, that's just my opinion here, if the Kurdish people want a Kurdistan, then they should not bring the fight to Turkish territory. They should end all that. No terrorist attacks inside Turkey. They should do like Israel when Israel's state was created by some Jews that took control of Israel and declared that Israel there. What the Jewish people did, they called upon Jews from all over the world to immigrate to this Israel so it could become a viable state. You have to amass enough people in an area in order to take fully control over it in a sustainable way. And I think the Kurdish people should do the same thing. Declare a Kurdish state in areas of Syria that they control, and then ask all Kurds to migrate from Turkey and Iraq and Iran into this new state in order to make it viable. And that's what I hope will happen long term in Syria. But let's bring up another map so I can show you more accurately what I mean by this. Now this map, the yellow borders here is Syria today. And how do I think, or rather how do I hope it will be divided? I hope that the Alevites will get their state here in the Mediterranean where they originally came from and where they are living in mass, and that they simply, Alevites from all over Syria, simply migrate back to this area to keep it strong. And then, the Russians will probably keep their bases there, and that's how they'll get a state. And then I hope that the Islamists, now I bring that up, that they will only control this area here long term, and they will be held back by another state that will form. And let me bring that up. That will be this one, and that could be the Kurdish state that I'm talking about. That will simply span this entire area. Now, there won't be just Kurds living in this state. There will also be all the moderate Muslims that just want to live and peacefully coexist with other religions and people of other political opinions, because there's this militia called the Free Syrian Army, and they are mostly composed of Muslims that are moderate, but also of Christians, also I believe of Druze people, and these are all good people, and I hope they join forces together with the Kurds and then have a new democratic state that eventually will have more Kurds in it than anything else, because if the Kurds starts to mass migrate towards this state, then they will become the majority. But they will have Damascus, where there won't be many Kurds living. It will mostly be Druze and good Muslims and also Christians. And also in this area, in this Islamic hell house that will be created up here with help from Turkey, they will purge all Christians and Kurds from these areas, and also Alevites. Everybody they don't like, they'll purge them out. And they'll have this hell house up there. But they can have it as long as the borders here can be held. And there's this natural waterway that creates a natural defense line that will be easy to keep for the Kurds up here. And then I have drawn a border here along some other mountain where you can create fighting positions and basically create a useful defense line against this Islamic State. Because I think the Islamists here will keep fighting, and there will be eternal war here. But how could this Kurdish country, or multi-ethnic country, because it also have many others than Kurds, how can that be sustained? Well, they will have this border here with Israel, and that's how they will get import and exports through, because they don't have any access to the coast, and they can't get anything through to Turkey or to this Islamist state because they are not friendly with this territory. So they have to have some friendly countries where they can trade through, and that will be Israel, and it will also be Jordan. And what about Iraq? I think Iraq is, well, it's popped up with oil money, so it's not a totally failed state, but it's also a country that's full of different religions that all hate each other, and it's almost a failed state. If they didn't have that oil, it would be just like Syria, dirt poor and with eternal war between sects. And I'm just trying to think, how can this Kurdish state be viable? How can they make their economy grow and prosper, and where can they get their imports and export with other countries, because that's absolutely necessary to survive long term from an economic point of view. Well, it has to go through Israel and also Jordan. And also Jordan would be interested in having this friendly state, because otherwise it will be an Islamist state, And I guarantee you, if these Islamists take over all of this area, what is next is that they will also take Lebanon and they'll also go for Jordan. So I think that's the long-term solution that I hope for, that I wish will happen. And it can happen if the United States could just pull their things together and together with Israel make it happen. It's clearly in our interest that there's a friendly country towards Western democracies here in the Middle East. And you could also have US bases and so forth. In fact, I don't think the US should have a base at all in Iraq, or for that sake in the rest of the Middle East, because they are not friendly, many of these countries. They don't like us, they hate us. So pull out of those countries in the Middle East that hate us. The United States should not be there. But here they could be, and they would have a friendly population. That's just my opinion. But okay, I think this video has been long enough, so I think I'll end it here. There'll be another video for another day with more news. I again want to say thank you so much for everybody who are donating and everybody who are supporting this channel, for subscribing. Thank you very much. And also the final word here, I wish you a happy life in freedom and democracy. Goodbye.